What does world-class real estate look like to you?
Try to combine old-fashioned traditional estate agent values, but with all the modern tech that can help you move that forward.
Excellent communication is at the heart of what they do.
Great real estate looks like strong leadership.
Consistency.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Iceberg Digital. Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. It is really hard for me not to say I'm Worrall and Ian Macbeth, but I am going to try and not do that today. We've got a guest coming on very shortly. We're actually recording this after today's episode. So one thing I would say to all of our guests is get your pen and paper ready, because there are some power quotes being dropped throughout this episode. A really insightful episode, and one I think one of the ones that we've enjoyed most over the last few weeks, I think, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, we love learning, don't we, in the show, and when we get a guest on, if we take a lot of value from the guest, then it kind of makes it all worthwhile for us on a selfish perspective. But what we also know is the audience, the listeners, the watchers are definitely going to get a lot of value from this one. Very experienced, in real estate, we'll topic it as. I think the episode is divided into 3 different sections, and you're going to get a lot of value from each of those sections. Probably in the middle, we're going to learn a lot about the Irish market, the differences over there as well. And it's probably a little bit of a portal window into what may come into the UK with regulations and that aspect. The rental market will blow your mind, and the sales market will want to make you pop up an estate agency in Ireland. So, I'm really looking forward to the feedback on this particular one. So, it's definitely one to get your pen and paper out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Regina Mangan, she reached out to us having listened to the podcast. Really interesting to hear that we've got listeners operating in slightly different markets. She runs Liberty Blue Estate Agents, and one of the things that really took me from our first meeting today is how much she values personal development and improvement. And actually, typically I do nod along quite a lot in this podcast episode, but when she was talking about what world-class real estate looked like and all that, I've done a lot of nodding. I think there's a lot of similarities between our thought process and hers. And like you say, we can learn a lot from this episode. So should we dive in and get her in?
Let's press the play button. Regina, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, carrying my own sunshine. It's very wet here in Waterford, but delighted to be on. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we had the off-camera quick chat of weather. We've all agreed that it's pretty dark, it's pretty miserable, but we're all looking forward to Christmas at the same time. So,
yeah, it takes a lot to dampen mood at this time of year, I always think. Thanks very much for reaching out to come on, Regina. I know that you listen, so you know the first question that is coming. What does world-class real estate look like to you?
I think it's about amazing customer service. In any industry, it's about great customer service, how we make our customers feel, and going above and beyond. As they say, it's never crowded along the extra mile. And I think it's about consistency, that boring word, it's so important to be consistent, boringly consistent, as they say. I always say, I know this might sound a bit dark, but at my funeral, I'd like them to say, she always did what she always said she would do when she said she would do it. And I think it's so important to be reliable. It's everything really in a world of promises and all the rest. People need to know that you're going to show up when you say you will show up.
I love that. I've never heard that before. It's never crowded along the extra mile. I really like that that term, and I think that sums up estate agency really well. You talked about customer service and being boringly consistent. We talk about consistency a lot on this show, but talk to me a little bit more about customer service, because your background is out of agency and you've maybe integrated that customer service into estate agency since you launched your business. So talk to us about what good customer service looks like in your eyes.
I set up the business 28 years ago, and I came from a hotel background. I worked with what was called Trust House 40 at the time, and everything was about customer service, from the time someone walked into the hotel to saying you're very welcome. And I believe it's so important to be mannerly, to be grateful, appreciative, to show thanks, and gratitude. It's very, very simple, really. It's treating people as you would like to be treated, making people feel special. And I really am obsessed about the small things. I think that if we focus on the small things, the big things will look after themselves. And I know that's a cliche and all the gurus say that, but it's so true. Have you ever gone into a hotel and there's a small little handwritten note to welcome you and your family, or something little extra, or they ring up to the room to check, are you happy? Or how many times have you gone to a hotel or a restaurant and sat down and had your meal and nobody walks over and asks you, how is your meal? I mean, it's a simple thing. So I find in a estate agency, actually just checking in with the clients all the time, having conversations with them, like Tom Pana says, always keep checking in. So when you have maybe a bit of bad news to break, that they trust you. And I have this phrase in the office as well that says, I'm just ringing to say I've no news, right? And it's a real Irish thing, any news. But in fact, if you've no news and you're picking up the phone, but you're saying, look, I have no news, I think that's really, really important. And I think it's very important for young agents in particular to understand that great AI, great to have emails, great to have texts, great to have WhatsApp, but we must speak to people because they need to hear the tone of our voice. And I believe that if you have to have a really difficult conversation, you should be eyeballing your client, making an appointment, sitting down with them and saying, look, we need to speak. That's usually about a serious price adjustment, let's face it. And I think most people are happy once you are communicating all the time. You need to be doing amazing marketing. It's important that you showcase their home in a beautiful way, have their photos look beautiful. Even if the property is a bit on the crinkly side or wrinkly side, it is getting them to work with you to present their home in the best possible light. And I think it's very important to have straight talking conversations.
Regina, the talking hospitality is always an interesting one for me because I found over the years some of the best people that I've recruited into a estate agency that have gone on to be very successful agents often have a hospitality background. It seemed for me, if I was looking to bring someone into the industry and I was looking at CVs and I noticed they'd done a year, maybe a year and a half or more in hospitality, often they transferred very well into a estate agency. They weren't necessarily the gun-ho salesperson, but they always pleased clients. They were always great for the office. What's the kind of fundamental skills that are taught in hospitality when you enter, when you go to work in hotels or that aspect of things? What's those kind of key skills that you would have taught, in your days in hospitality that do transfer very well into a estate agency?
Well, one, everything is about making people feel welcome.
Is it the feeling? Is that the difference?
It is a feeling, yes. It's feeling welcome. We all want to feel welcome. It's how you make people feel. Also, you have to be a really good problem solver if you're going to be any good in hotels, whether that's waitressing or management or whatever level you are, there will always be problem solving. And let's face it, that's what we do in real estate. We solve problems. Whether that's an issue that a buyer might have or a vendor might have with a septic tank or whatever is going on. But really, you have to be a good listener as well. You have to listen to what the person is saying to you. Empathy. Being able to deal with people who are maybe a bit on the growly side, or if somebody is getting very cross about something, to be able to talk to them and reassure them, assuming that they're reasonable, by the way. But it is about treating people well, going the extra mile, anticipating people's problems. I often say, hey, when I ask somebody a question, they give me the bare bones of an answer. Good hospitality is about looking around the corner. Somebody asks for a cup of tea, maybe they get a biscuit with it. It's the little extra. So, that's what I think good hospitality in real estate looks like. And everything is about good attitude. So you don't want to be hiring somebody who might serve a customer and be sort of bolshy or not very friendly. Or, okay, they might have a pain in their toe walking around, but that's not the customer's problem. You've got to put on a show. And that's very important, good morning, how we greet people on the telephone, how we solve, how we answer their questions, it's very, very important.
We had our, or not ours, but there was one of the Negotiator Awards a couple of weeks ago, and I was after the conference, I was checking into the hotel, and it was it's an expensive hotel. It's probably the most expensive hotel room I've ever paid for, to be honest with you. And the entrance was fantastic, and the door guy opened the door for me and said, good afternoon, sir. And I walked through, all the Christmas decorations were in the lobby, and I was like, wow, this place is really spectacular. And when I went to do the check-in, the lady was very polite, quite a young girl, very polite. There was a guy to the next to her that was checking someone else in, a Chinese couple. I don't think they spoke too much English, but he was being very flamboyant and really trying to sort of bring them out of their shell a little bit. And I kind of was more clocking what he was saying. And the lady was very polite. She checked me in, but then we had this moment where it went quiet, where she was clicking for about 2, maybe 3 minutes, which is quite a long time to just have silence. And I'd given her all the details, I'd done everything, and I started to feel uncomfortable because she was just clicking away like there was a problem. And I said to her, is there a problem with the check-in? Bearing in mind it's an hour and a half after check-in. And she just simply said, I'm just trying to find you the best room that's available and ready to move into. And I was like, okay, no problem at all. And then 30 seconds later, I had a key card and I walked off. But as a kind of early 20-year-old girl, all she had to say to me is, right, so I'm going to try and find you the best possible available room that you can check into right now that's not being cleaned. And I would have waited patiently, feeling very happy. But because the communication came on my prompt at the end, there was a 2-minute sort of feeling for me where I felt uncomfortable because I thought there was a problem. And as you just mentioned then, it's a skill which it's hard to teach, that skill, isn't it? It can be taught, but it doesn't come naturally to the newer generation or to certain personalities. So as you mentioned, feeling, it's the first thing I thought of with hospitality. It's very easy to settle someone just through good communication, very simple communication as well.
You're bang on. I always say silence is the enemy. I actually equate it to, when you watch a Netflix movie and somebody's dying and there's this line, right, to show that they're dead. And I always say silence is like death, and it's just rude. And it's so easy to say to somebody, I won't be long now, Mr. Macbeth, 2 minutes, I'm going to find you the best room in the house. It is that way of making somebody feel special, and that's why talking to our clients, and I say it even in the office, we recently, one of the teams sent out a contract, but made an assumption that it was one name for the vendor and not excluded our partner. So the client sent an email in and said, look, you've left off my husband. And one of the team went back and said, look, I'm really sorry about that. I've redone it. So I called her and I said, that's grand. You've sent the email. You need to pick up the phone and say, I'm sorry about that. I made a mistake. She'll appreciate that. But we have to be careful that we do have conversations with people and that the human touch isn't removed from the whole real estate transaction. And that goes back to exactly what you said there, Ian.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on, Regina, about it's often the small things in agency, and I say that internally in our business and also externally when talking to clients. I don't believe estate agency is rocket science. I think it's a lot of small things either done really well or quite often not done at all. That you mentioned there about just picking the phone up, having a conversation is one of those small things. Have you got any other examples of like those micro little elements of communication that you try and integrate and encourage your team to do that you think that, it's not one of those things that just makes a difference to make your business as successful as it is, but that when they accumulate together, that's what makes the experience from okay or poor to really good and likely to lead to all of those 5-star reviews?
So one of the things that goes down really well is the WhatsApp group with our vendors. They absolutely love it. And I have to kind of really just remind the team, it's so important to keep engaged there. So you set it up and then you let them know there's viewings. You let them know that the engineer is popping out on Wednesday. But that does not replace the phone call. Hi, John, just letting you know how the viewing went. And we have a standard that after the viewing, you phone. You always phone to let them know how the viewing went. It's unacceptable not to phone in my business directly after the viewing. I hear so many sellers who say, I don't know how the viewings are going. I just can't believe that. I think it's basic. So it's simple things like somebody walks into the office, the person behind the desk stands up to greet the person. Simple things like using people's names, the WhatsApp groups for the sales. People love that. Actually, a bit of humour goes a long way as well. You know, when you can have good conversation with your client, when you get to know them. Marketing, that's so important. We do video for every single listing. Sometimes I've been asked in the office, well, look, the fee for that is small. Maybe we skip that. No, that's the standard. We consistently do a video, whether it's a 110,000 property or it's a 600,000 euro property. So it's really sticking to the process. I believe passionately in processes and systems so that you're not leaving it to chance. Our values are very important to us. We do the right thing. We take pride in what we do and we love to innovate. Our brand personality is that we're straight talking and we're energetic. And those are on the walls in the office. And so sometimes when we're not being consistent, I point up and I say, do you mind reading that to me? I'm very cheesy. And they read it and I say, what does that look like to you? And then very simply, our mission is on the wall with our ladybird, because the ladybird brings luck and abundance wherever she goes. And our mission is to be helpful experts and to showcase Waterford as a great place to live. So everything we do is about showcasing our place, where our community is. And to be helpful experts means that guides all of our live after fives, talking about septic tanks. Okay, I'm obsessed by septic tanks, but hiring a good solicitor, to declutter. So again, we're consistent with those live after fives. And then our newsletters go out every month. So we're consistent with those. People know they expect them. So it's really systems, processes. And also part of our mission on the wall is we aim to bring happiness to our customers, our community and our colleagues. So that's really, really the guiding star. So one day, this gentleman rang in very grumpy because he said that the sign for the house that was on the market next door was tipping off his curb. And one of the team said, no, it's not. I said, hang on. I want you to read that mission statement. We bring happiness to our customers, our community. Yeah. And I said, what category does that gentleman fall into? Community. Is he happy? No. What do? We move the sign. It doesn't matter if it's tipping off his curb or not. It just doesn't matter. It's about doing the right thing and bringing happiness. Little note then to apologise for the inconvenience in a mini box of sweets. So it is really the small things, that concierge service, like you get in a hotel, that maybe the concierge would drop something up to the room if there was something wrong with your heating. It's all of those small touch points.
Yeah, I love that. Happiness to the community is a really important one, because in a estate agency, what I think sometimes gets missed is the immediate transaction is 100% of our focus, where our market, if we are marketing to 100% of the market, is not just every homeowner, but it's everyone that visits the town. It's everyone that potentially might buy. It's the tenant that potentially is a first-time buyer. It's it's everyone in the community is at some point potentially a client, and therefore they should be 100% of our focus, not just the transaction, which is a small amount of the marketplace. And I think estate agents are often guilty of that, to the point where when the transaction is done, there's no longer focus even on completion day. Sometimes, some agents kind of just want to chuck them a key and say, off you go. The solicitor's already paid me this morning. You're not relevant to me anymore, which is a shame. And I do think the industry's getting better at it, but it is still very transactional. So everything you just said there is very much fundamentally that standard of consistency that you want to appeal to. I'm quite interested to know the difference, just from my own point of view, the difference from the English market to where you are as well. And the reason why I ask that is England is in a difficult place economically, politically, from a media point of view at the moment. And a lot of people are leaving, and we have seen, or we do expect, somewhere around 11,000 millionaires to leave England this year alone. And one of the locations that is often looked at is Ireland, for tax reasons, for lifestyle reasons, community, all the different reasons. It's a beautiful country. I've been from one side of it to the other in one day. I'm very aware of that. And I'm just interested to know what the market difference is from your point of view, how technically as well as market conditions.
Okay, so first of all, to put things into context, England, not the UK, but England has a population of 56 million. I was looking this morning, and the population of Ireland is 5.5 million. So just to compare the scale, in terms of real estate, the housing market is very dysfunctional in Ireland. It's very much, though, a seller's market, very hot market the last couple of years. So we have bidding wars on a huge proportion of second-hand properties. I'm part of a UK mastermind group with Sanjay Gandhi, so I'm following the UK market a lot, and I see that a lot of houses don't sell. That's unheard of in Ireland. Like, we would sell probably 95% of our stock. We always sell them. And usually if there's delays, it's really because of boundary and title issues, and which eventually get sorted. So we use a system called offer, because for a huge chunk of our properties, we have multiple bids. So we put a property on, for example, on the Dummer Road at 465, then that sells for 502. That's typical, very, very typical for our 3-bed semi-Ds, 4-bed semi-Ds, those type of properties. So the market is very hot. There is, in Waterford alone, only, how many did I say is advertised? There are 299 properties on the main Irish portal, which is called Daft, in all of Waterford City and County for sale. Like, it's a teensy-weensy amount of stock. So we have a huge problem with stock. We don't tend to work in chains in Ireland. I see a huge amount of chains happen in the UK. Mostly, in the majority of cases, people sell the property before they buy a property. They're cash buyers or they're mortgage buyers. But we do very few chains. And I think that's probably because the market is so hot. When the market cools, needless to say, chains will become more popular. Up until recently, there's been no bridging loans by the banks, which is very difficult if somebody wants to right size. But now Bank of Ireland in the new year are bringing in a bridging loan option for people who want to right size, which will mean that it will make the transition much better. Also in Ireland, we are heavily regulated as estate agents. You can't just leave one job and go in and be a licensed estate agent. You've got to do 2 years in college and you've got to qualify. It's definitely raised the bar. We're regulated, we're audited every couple of years, and it certainly has improved the trust element for the consumer, for estate agents. In terms of the rental market, it's carnage here, carnage. So the legislation that you're going through, I'd say they've taken a few tips from Ireland, which is not good. There's new legislation coming into play in March, which means that when a landlord rents to a tenant, they will only be able to sell with tenant in situ. The tenant will be entitled to stay there for 6 years, and Irish people won't tolerate that. So we've seen a 35% increase in landlords selling in the last quarter since this announcement. I think it's actually going to get worse, really worse. I think people would accept a tenancy for 3 years. That would be more palatable, just like maybe an investment you would make in stock markets or in funds. So new homes have started to improve, but Ireland are way behind the destination, the targets. We're meant to build somewhere in the region of 60,000 a year new homes, but I think it's more like 30,000 because there's massive issues around infrastructure. So governments the last 20 years haven't invested in infrastructure, issues with water, issues with electricity. Planning is hugely onerous. Developers are having massive issues getting through objections, all of that stuff. Plus, in the last 20 years, they did not invest in social housing. So that has topped up the carnage. So you have the social housing eating into the private sector rental, which is shrinking the stock even further. So it's not good for anybody. Sorry.
That was pretty comprehensive. I'm really interested in what you said about chains there, Regina, and how there aren't chains because it's a fast-moving market. So obviously, we went through a really fast-moving market post-COVID, and you probably saw more of people not able to find their dream home and therefore taking steps. Typically, I think in the UK, if you don't find your dream home, you probably actually just don't sell it. That's what a lot of we see in England. So are you seeing people sell quickly, move into rented to buy themselves some time, and then purchase? Is that why there's not very many chains? And you say that about the fast-moving market, or is there a different system there that encourages people to break the chains? Because chains, as you said, chains are a nightmare, and that's what can really delay the transaction in this country.
That's a toughie. I'm struggling to answer that. I'll give you my opinion. Well, one, according to Daft, 48% of buyers in Ireland have to sell a property. So that's the first stat. We do very few chains, but they do happen. I think they probably happen at maybe the middle to upper range. Yeah. Okay. So there's so many first-time buyers on the market that they eat huge chunk of the supply. Okay, so needless to say, first-time buyers don't have to sell. Then there's people who have second properties. So they move into the second property, or they have, I call it a loading bay, to stay in until they get their other property. But thinking of two cases at the moment, I had a lovely property in West Waterford. It was at the 5-something bracket, but both buyers that were interested had to sell their property. And needless to say, when we sale agreed at the best price with the best buyers who are the most motivated, and that's obviously so important because sometimes the best buyer might not be the highest paying buyer, they're the most motivated buyer. Same in all markets. But their sale fell through because of a crappy engineer's report. There was loads of problems with the house they didn't tell me about. So then I had to resell the house, which I did. But yeah, it's extra work. It's extra. There's a lot more navigation because you have extra solicitors, you have extra speed bumps. But in some cases, you've just no choice. And I think in Ireland, maybe there's just so much competition for the properties that you might have 5 interested parties, 2 are cash buyers, 2 are mortgage approval, and then 1 is subject to sale of their home. And then you look at the sale of that house, they'd want to be paying a premium to entice the seller to accept them. And you'd also want to evaluate that house. Where is it located? How much in demand will that house be? Is it a bit wrinkly? How will the engineer's report turn out? How likely is it to go the distance? And I often call it, it's like horses in the Grand National. It's all great. They're firing along, they're going along in the race. But if they don't get to the finish line, it's no good. So it really depends on each scenario. And as I said, we're a smaller country, and maybe as well with the influx of international buyers in the last couple of years, that has heated the market up, and these buyers don't have to sell anything to fund the purchase.
Yeah. I would assume, knowing a fair few Irish people as well, I would assume in Ireland, a buyer or a seller is more likely to put the house on the market, find a buyer, do that as an independent transaction, then go and search, find a property, do that as an independent transaction, and just simply move in with family for a period of time, much more comfortably than what English people would do. And I think that's probably something that probably has an impact with that no chain, is they'll just move in with family for a month. Whereas in England, we just wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that family move. We'd want our own independence. We'd want to rent somewhere for 6 months or whatever. Whereas in Ireland, the family community spirit is much more open arms, or willing to kind of house each other.
I think you're right. I think that's definitely a contributing factor. I know one thing, we wouldn't take on a sale if we didn't understand the person's forward on journey, because you want to know that when you find a buyer and all the conditions are right, that they have somewhere to go. That's a really big thing.
What's the transaction time, Regina? What's the sort of average transaction time in Ireland? I want to talk about the 2 years in college as well in a second, but what's the average kind of transaction time for a sale to go through legally from point of offer accepted?
I suppose it's probably somewhere around 3 months, but we try to get it between 8 and 10 weeks. Some 6 weeks. It's all about the sales progression, as you know. So it's about encouraging the vendors and the buyers to have good solicitors. Let's face it, really, rubbish solicitors can kill deals. I just had one recently, beautiful property. I sold, no planning permission for the swimming pool. Oh my God. Anyway, but a rubbishy solicitor on one side will just kill a deal. And I now really, myself and my team, we really do encourage our sellers and our buyers to work around the 3 solicitors. So in Ireland, we do have quite a few dinosaur solicitors, who still send pigeons across the sky to communicate. So, we need efficient solicitors who have a conveyancing department. I'm sure that's exactly the same for you guys. We don't want to hear that the lawyer is out in court, not our problem, right? So I think that's really important. Then it's about the progression, the engineers, all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes we blame the system when it's actually the agent's fault that they're not staying on top of it.
That's the first time it sounds very similar to our market.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those differences. Ian brought up the two years in college there, and you mentioned more regulation and the audit. So I'm interested to find out a little bit about when that came in. You mentioned that you feel like it's made the industry viewed more professional. Talk us through how it was perceived before it came in, and then what the change has been like, and also what sort of things are the government coming in and auditing, because I'm really intrigued to hear about. I'm all for more regulation in our industry. I think get rid of some of the cowboys, get rid of these people that just come into the industry and start making their own rules after 6 months or what have you. So I'm quite keen for regulation, but talk us through what it looks like in Ireland a little bit more.
Well, first of all, if we want to be seen as professionals, we must be professional. We talk about accountants and solicitors. We're professionals. What we're doing is very much in the legal sphere, and we're providing a service for somebody who's going to make the biggest transaction in their entire life. I think compliance and regulation is very important. So for us, you have to go to college, do 2 years, get your license. You learn about law, you learn about valuations, you learn about, a whole range of different things, marketing and the lot. And there is a way that things must be done. So, for example, we're governed by the property regulator, and we have to have what's called a property services agreement, a PSA. there is a template for that. You can add a bit, but you must stick to the template, and you must put in your insurance details, and you must put in what happens if the seller wants to exit the contract, and what happens if you exit, and the ground rules basically and conditions around the sale. So that's really important. That gives transparency to the seller, and it sets out your terms. And the agent can add bits to it about if the vendor, pulls and you from the sale and you have a buyer, and how much you can charge. We get audited, which means that you have to have records of bids, right? Because let's face it, consumers complain about, well, are they phantom bids? Are they real bids? And it's very important that that people can trust estate agents. So bids have to be recorded. When you do a valuation, it has to be recorded. It has to be in the contract. If there's a significant change in the valuation, that has to be adjusted in the contract. And the audit's pretty scary, so you better be doing a good job in Ireland, because you can be struck off, or you can be frozen or suspended, and then you've got to apply for your license annually. So your accountant has to give a very detailed accountant's report to do with your client's money in the client account. So really good due diligence, and you could be audited at any time. And then the public can complain to the Property Services Agreement, the property regulator, and they can be sometimes legitimate and maybe not so legitimate, but it is a very good forum for people. And in the past, auctioneers were down at the very bottom of the list beside taxi drivers, where trust came in. And now I think that trust is improving, and that's why we use a bidding platform, so nobody can say, well, was there another bid? Because all good business is based on trust. That's essential. And I think it's kind of wild that the UK isn't regulated. I wouldn't like to sell my house from some kind of a Jack the lad who's just maybe been driving taxis, and then the following week is selling houses because he's watched a few videos on YouTube. It's a big deal to sell somebody's house.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk off camera about Irish taxi drivers. There's a story there somewhere. In terms of that 2-year course at college, is that like a full-time, you are 5 days a week in school, or is that something that you do sort of like night school while you're kind of studying, while you're working full-time at another job?
I'm glad you asked me that, actually. And so there are two options. So I have two on our team are doing two different options. So John is doing the one through the Institute of Professional Auctioneers and Valuers. So his course is every Saturday. It's hybrid between in person in Dublin and online, mainly online, and I think about a third in person. And then there's they all have to do assignments during the course of the week, and then they have to do exams at exam period. So it's big pressure for them, to be fair, because he's working Monday to Friday. And then Rachel is in a different college in Cork, and she still gets her license. It's just a different program, slightly different, but you still get the same qualification. And she goes to college on a Wednesday. She's paid Monday to Friday, but she goes to college on a Wednesday. And she again would have assignments to do at the weekends and exams. One of the courses is free, and the other one costs $3,500 a year. So it depends really on the person's lifestyle. Let's say, everybody's different, but the on-the-job experience is essential. Then you can apply your learnings into the job. I think it'd be impossible to learn to be an estate agent and just go to college because you wouldn't be able to connect everything together. So the job is where you learn everything, and then the compliance, and you join the dots by both.
It's a perfect setup, isn't it? I mean, it's very much like passing your driving test, isn't it? You're learning with a someone who's teaching you how to drive in the actual car. You're physically learning, but then you also have to do your theory. So you have to do your research, and you have to stand highways and byways, and you have to stand, the rules of the game effectively. It makes total sense. It's very much like an apprenticeship almost,
That's exactly what it is. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is, Ian. So it's very good. It puts manners on people as well. I've met people who are like, oh, they're watching Selling Sunset. I want to be a realtor. I want to be on Instagram. But let's face it, that is not it. It's a very stressful business. You have clients contacting you 24/7. We take things very personally if we don't win listings. If there's a problem or a complaint, it can stress you out. Even on Sunday, I took my mother to a poetry reading. And just before I pulled up to this lovely Zen event, I started thinking about, excuse me, I started thinking about a problem with one of our purchasers. And then I went, stop, Regina, stop. Be mindful, be present, don't go there. So we all get a bit of that. But I think it's a very good system, and I think it would be worthwhile in the UK to raise the bar.
Makes it a profession though, doesn't it, as well? That means that if you start in that profession, you're much more likely to stay in there if you've put that investment in. It also makes it harder for people to just step into the industry, in the later on in their career, for example. So I think that's, like you say, that's a really good move. I think it makes a lot of sense. And just quickly before we go, Regina, I'm just conscious of time, but I want to talk to you about, you mentioned off camera about your passion for learning and continuous personal development. Can you talk us through your journey with that and how you've developed that and brought it into the business, and obviously you've ended up writing your own book as well. So talk us through how important personal development is for you.
It's hugely important. I always want to improve and grow. And I know this might sound a bit crazy, but hasn't Madonna maintained an amazing career in pop by reinventing herself? And I think if you want to be successful in real estate, you need to reinvent yourself. You need to be looking at what's coming down the tracks. How can you be smarter, faster, better? That's the name of my book. How can you be smart? How to build a smarter, faster, better estate agency business. So if you go onto the Liberty Blue website, you can buy a copy there. I went to the UK 8 years ago to a prop tech conference. I met a guy called Christian Byfield who changed my life. You all know Christian because he's famous. He is the partner and founder of Base Property. He looks like a Viking, and I have a business in Waterford, which is the oldest city in Ireland, founded by the Vikings. Straight away, I thought, this guy, I was meant to meet him. Mm-hmm. Anyway, after I heard him speak a few times and contribute, I asked him, could I visit him in his business? I was fascinated. 2 weeks later, I land with 3 of my team. He and Anne, his partner, gave us a whole day, and that created the vision for the future for my business. That was my roadmap. I, for 4 years, could see what the future would look like. Calm office compared to our office, which was like a hugely busy airport. People coming and going. Everything was manual. Couldn't understand Christian. So relaxed. The phone wasn't hopping off the phone. It was crazy. It was so different. So we implemented 14 pieces of technology over 4 years. We won some big national awards. So we're really punching above our weight. Then I came across an event called Sanjfest online. I got myself on the plane, went to my own, and I was like, oh my God, a child at a sweet shop for the very first time in my life. My jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe when I heard Paul Long speak about Facebook and all the things you could do. I'd never, ever been exposed to anything like that. Matt Giggs jumped off a table with excitement talking about branding and values, which is where we really got a lot of our values from. So heads up to Matt Giggs. And that conference was a massive transformation on top of the first meeting I had with Christian. I became very close to Sanjay, and he became my mentor, and I joined his mastermind group. And that change, those learnings were transformational. And we implemented the learnings, because it's one thing to learn, you must implement, right? And I knew that we needed to grow our business. We needed to be driving the social media, making videos, and also trust the process. So when I heard really smart people, really successful people talk and share about their journey, I said, you know what? I'm going to follow what they do. I'm going to emulate quite a bit of it in our own style. Trust the process like you would with the gym. If you consistently show up, you consistently train, you consistently do what you set out to do, and you stick to the plan where possible, you will get the results. And that happened for us. And part of the mastermind then met some amazing agents in the UK. I was only in the UK 3 weeks ago at Sanjay's mastermind in London and Park Lane. And again, learning stuff and implementing it. So really, I think continuous improvement is all about learning and implementation and being in the right space with the right people. And as they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the bloody wrong room. I made sure that I was always in a room with people who knew more stuff than me. And even down to simple things like Trainual, implementing that, uploading our intellectual property, our training, our tutorials, getting the team during COVID to put everything on there and to continuously upgrade that. So for new starters, we've training plans, we've modules, our YouTube channel. Sanjay always said, get going with your YouTube channel. We've 1,600 videos on our YouTube channel, and we started with one. So this book, I just was passionate about all the mistakes I'd made in business. I mean, I'm 1 year off 30 years in business, and I really feel it took me a long time to get here. I kind of feel I took the long road. And so I put into the book the podcasts I listened to, the mentors who've inspired me, the cock-ups, what I did to make things better. And the smarter is about technology, the faster is about innovation, and better is about continuous improvement. It's not that we are that, but and I do think it's important to share. And and I think estate agents are worried about what people think. I say, don't worry about it. Drive on. Who cares? It's not their business. And actually, as my mother always brought me up, nobody's interested, because people are really only interested in themselves.
It's a great point. And I love the implementation side of things, because I think I know a lot of people that are just conference, goers or training goers, but actually implementing the stuff that you learn. And I do think somewhere in the show notes, Mark, we need Regina's top 10 quotes, because it's definitely the best quotes that I've heard on a podcast this year that we've recorded. So we need to get that top 10, because there's some absolute crackers in there that
and I throw one in, which my mother, and any speech I ever gave, I would say, enthusiasm is the baking powder of life. For without it, you are flat, and with it, you rise.
There we go.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah, perfect way to wrap up. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and there's some great value alongside the great quotes. And it's very insightful as well, from the difference between England and Ireland. I mean, if you're an estate agent and you're looking to set up, how you describe the sales market in Ireland, go set up in Ireland by the sounds of it, because it's great. Obviously difficult for landlords and difficult to build that lettings database, and comes with its own challenges. But I loved everything that you said about actually the apprenticeship model, the standards, the compliance. And I think that's something that I'm sure at some point England has to adopt. So it's been very interesting to see through the eyes of an agent working in Ireland, because maybe it's a glimpse into the future of what we will see over here. So thank you very much for joining us on the show, Regina.
Great. Thank you so much. And anyone who's listening, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat to you.
A massive thank you to Regina for joining us today. My favourite 2 quotes that I've got written down here, Ian, is the one that she just dropped in at the end. She almost couldn't wait to put it in there. I love that. Yeah. And that was exactly how I thought she came across throughout the chat that we've had this morning. Very, very enthusiastic, very passionate about not only her business, but the local area, the industry, the profession, and and self-improvement as well. So enthusiasm is the baking powder of life. I love that.
It's just an underused personality trait or mindset, isn't it? Enthusiasm, because it is infectious. And when you're in your office or when you're with your team, if someone's full of enthusiasm, it rubs off on everyone else. And yeah, I totally agree. It's the baking powder of life. And, when you're having a rough day or you're a bit unmotivated, it's easy to stick to the discipline and get it done. But if someone sat next to you is enthusiastic, in fact, Mike always says, my business partner, he always says is a big part of the reason that he wanted to go into business with me is because I'm normally quite enthusiastic and quite bubbly on that aspect. And that's an area he struggles. So where he's getting his head down and doing stuff, I'm bouncing around the office in an inflatable avocado or something and everyone's smiling, and little things like that, I think kind of rub off. And I think, it's a great quote. I love the one that she said at the start as well. And I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but just something about it's not crowded in the last mile.
That was mile. Look, I've literally got them two written down here. These two here, it's never crowded along the extra mile.
Yeah, I like that. And it's kind of relevant to me. Obviously, being passionate with running is, it's hard to finish. It's hard to finish these challenges, which makes you special when you're in that last bracket, because a lot of people have quit along the way. And that is perfect for business. It's perfect for a estate agency. It's not something that's got a hugely longevity attached to it from a career perspective. There's a lot of people that have done estate agency. It's not a lot of people that stay estate agents, career-long, seasoned estate agents. And I think if you can and you're good, then that also puts you in a really good place, doesn't it? So, really interesting. Irish market's bonkers, right? It sounds crazy.
Yeah. I just want to touch on the enthusiasm before we talk about the Irish market, because I think that is a great quote for this type of conversation, but actually you can easily win listings by being the most enthusiastic agent in there. So I think it's really relevant to estate agency. But the Irish market, I was not expecting her to talk about it being a seller's market as strongly as she did. I was really quite taken aback by that.
95% of what we list sells.
Yeah. English agents are thinking, happy days.
Yeah. I mean, you're taking that all day long. What it means is it's more profitable, it's more efficient. Doesn't mean that it doesn't come with headaches. And, when I went across Ireland, what I noticed is you've got main roads and then you've got plots, like square plots of land. But the infrastructure to the non-estate, and most of Ireland seems like that. You've obviously got your towns and your pockets, but along the way, it is going to be septic tanks. It is going to be where's the connection points. And I can imagine it's quite a hard transaction to get through. But as she said, you will get there. It just comes with headaches. And she was talking about 3 sets of solicitors, wasn't she, as well at one point? So there's obviously some extra legal challenges that kind of come into the play. But people are professional. They've done the course. They've done the qualifications. They've done the apprentices. In some cases, they've spent €3,500 euros, I would have thought it is, in terms of getting that qualification. And I would imagine
that we should be. That's where we should be, isn't it?
Yeah. 100%. You can't argue. I don't think anyone would argue with that, would they? It's kind of, okay, you start your job, you go through the qualifications, you do 2 years of it, you're going to stick with it after that, aren't you?
Absolutely,
yeah. You've earned the right to be a professional, so you get the respect for it.
You get good people into your business. You invest in those people. You're more likely to retain them. That's what we want. If we're growing business, we want to retain good talent, and that's a surefire way of doing it. Helping them to progress in their career is going to help you to retain it. So and I look at that enviously and think, okay, it might be a few headaches for us to catch up and do some exams, but you shouldn't be scared of that. I don't think that shouldn't be a reason not to do it. All of the audits and all of that. Again, that sort of thing doesn't scare me because we're very process driven as a business, and someone could walk in and audit us now and it wouldn't give us, sleepless nights or anything like that. So look on that jealousy. Definitely not quite as jealous as the of the rental market over there by the sounds of things.
They're selling up.
Challenge.
Yeah, selling up sounds like a challenge. Obviously, we didn't deep dive into it, so It's something to maybe hear more about another day. But yeah, it sounds like it's very much favoured in the tenant's eyes. And actually, if you are a landlord, you have to look at it as very much a leave it alone for many, many years, like a good stock market investment. Kind of just, I bought a property, there's a tenant in there, and it's kind of not hands off. I'm sure it isn't, but you're not planning to do any release of the equity or sale of the property for a decade, really, is what you're looking at.
It's a long-term investment, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Great episode though. And definitely follow Regina on LinkedIn. She put some great local community videos up on LinkedIn, and some good posts as well. Obviously, with the books, there's a lot of value in there. Nearly 30 years in business, you can only take good value from someone like that. And definitely, if you've not hit subscribe, because next week me and Mark have got a Christmas special coming out. Hats may be on. And it's going to be an interesting podcast to finish. Not quite finish December, actually. We'll have one out on the 31st as well. But just before Christmas, we'll have a fun Christmas special. So you don't want to miss that one as well.
Full blown Santa outfits, I heard. Anyway, as you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. A massive thank you to Regina for joining us today. We will pop a link in the show notes to her website as well, where you can go on and buy her book if you are interested. I'm Mark Worrall. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.